We have this discussion in faith and trust that the church belongs to you, and you love your church, and you will protect your church so that it will stand to the very end. So bless our discussion now. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Okay, so this is Chris Bylsma, and he is no longer, but Chris was a deacon up to the end of June 2025, and therefore he could serve at Synod. The fact that he served at Synod is not the reason that he's no longer a deacon. His term as deacon just came to an end at the end of June. So I thought I would just start by, for those who may not be familiar with how does a person actually end up at Synod, I thought I would just kind of review that for you a moment. So, like I said, Chris was a deacon serving on our council, and all active council members are actually eligible to serve at Synod. And you might think, well, there's some huge process to this, but actually how the process starts is at a council meeting, we basically ask, so, would anyone like to go to Synod this year? And actually, our church has been very well represented at Synod, and I'm very thankful for that our office bearers have been willing to serve at the next level. But it's not like everybody raises their hands and says, yeah, I'm ready to go and spend a week or more. Actually, it turns out to be of my own time, my vacation, and all of that to go and serve at a denominational level. But it is very important for us as a church when you do that. So Chris was one of those people who raised his hand and said, yes, I would be willing to go. So what happens then is we bring his name to the next classis meeting, and actually this is going to happen at our classis meeting in February, okay? But we will bring anyone who, the council, so Chris has to raise his hand, but then the council has to nominate him as well. So we've got to sort of approve, yeah, Chris would be a good guy to send. So we come then with those nominations to classis. And at our classis meeting, how it sort of works is this. All the pastors are basically put in the pool. It's sort of an obligation. So we're kind of told, you need to raise your hand and go. And then whatever nominees we have as elders and deacons, we add those to the list. And then at the classis meeting, classis begins to vote on those names. And you might think that, well, we probably have, 5 or 6 elders and 10 deacons to choose from. It's usually not the case. In fact, we feel blessed if we have 2 or 3 of each to choose from. But then we do vote, and the classis then sends 1 deacon and 1 elder, and usually 2 pastors to classis. Okay? So all the office bearers within our classis, so from the churches of classis, are sort of eligible to be nominated and voted on, and that's how you end up at Synod. So that's kind of the process for you, right, Chris?
Yep.
Yep.
From what I understand, I was the only deacon that put my name in, or there was one other person who did, but it was she couldn't make it or something, so I was the only one. If that's true.
I wasn't going to say that, but
that's okay. That's all right.
But I think we were all very glad to have you nominated and to send you. And I thought maybe it'd be good if you would just kind of describe from there, what was that process like of kind of, for one, preparing to go to Synod, because it's not like you just hop in the car and go, right? So what was that process like? And then, some of the details for us as well. Once you got there, where was it? What was it like? What's the schedule like? Where do you live? Where do you eat? What do you do? So if you could just walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So first of all, I hopped on my motorcycle, a 2005 BMW R1200 GS. She took me there without any problems at all. And it was a fun adventure to cross a border on a motorcycle. That was pretty cool.
So let's back up a little bit before the motorcycle.
I just wanted to clear that up. It wasn't a car.
I know you wanted to tell us that.
Oh, yeah, that was...
But before you got on the motorcycle, you did actually have to do some preparing, right?
Very much. So it was probably after I was, they voted me in classes to go. I did all this registration stuff, and they asked a lot of questions of where I would best fit with the talents that I've been given to serve. So I kind of said there's, some of the talents that I had in areas that they needed for different committees. So I just registered, told them about myself, and then they put me in a committee. And then they gave out the agenda for Synod. And then in the agenda for Synod, each committee has certain things that they need to review. Now, the agenda for Synod, what I understand, is just a bunch of reviews from the denominational organizations like World Renew and all of those things. And so the committee that I was assigned to was like the Missions and Ecumenical Faith Relations Committee. So we had a number of different things to talk about, which we will talk about later. So I was given this. It came to my mailbox in probably like April. And my goal every month is to read a book a month, but this really put a hamper on that. It took me a while to go through this and really understand what was going on. So April and May, I was going through this, especially the ones that were pertinent to the committee that I was on, the Missions and Ecumenical Faith Relations Committee. We had a couple of different, I forget what you call them now, but overtures, exactly. Thank you. Please, anyone sign it. You guys probably know about this stuff better than I do. So I was going over overtures that Synod received for this committee that we were going to discuss as a committee and then going to discuss there. So April, May, I was studying, preparing for agenda to understand what we were going to talk about and make decisions upon.
So do you remember about how many committees that there actually are?
I think there are 6 committees, some finance committees. There was a church order committee, the committee that talked about, what's the word, people who are coming into office. I forget what the word is for that.
Ordained,
ordination committee.
Rob, you want to come up here too?
Yeah, please, and thank you, Mr. Bukema. And a couple other committees as well for people much smarter than I am. I can probably look at them right here. It's probably right here. I was prepared for the Missions and Ecumenical Faith Relations Committee overtures. They were all very interesting and thought-provoking. But what was really thankful I was really thankful it wasn't all up to me. There were a lot of reports as well in the agenda for Synod 2025, so I could read what denominational boards had studied and learned about and understand a little better from those reports as well.
Great. So you hopped on your motorcycle with your big book?
Sure did, yep.
And then you got there. Where was it?
It was at Redeemer University in Ancaster, Ontario. It was, I took the ferry across Lake Michigan, stayed the night at my brother's house in Grand Rapids, and then on a Wednesday did that, and then on a Thursday drove to Ancaster, and we started on Thursday night there, Thursday afternoon. Friday, we were in committee, and Saturday we were in our committees. So I was in the Ecumenical Faith Relations and Missions Committee, and we were discussing all the things that we are soon to talk about, amongst other things. We were talking a lot about a number of things so that we could prepare reports to send to the main synod. And we were in committee on Friday and Saturday. On Sunday, we had the day off. I went down to Niagara Falls and went to a church there. And then on Monday, we had the General Synod. And so that was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and into Thursday. And we were just talking about all of the different committees then brought their reports to the Synod, which we would then discuss and vote on for Synod 2025.
So just for clarification, Chris's committee basically finished up his work on Saturday. These committees, when they arrive to Synod, they get together and they begin their work. Some committees, their work will go deep into the weekend. Others may not go that long. But all of the different overtures and communications that have been passed along to Synod throughout the year will get divided up among committees, and then that committee has to work through each of those and try to formulate responses or actions that they then present to the Synod for action. So Synod itself actually began on Monday with those general sessions, and that's when they begin to take up all of the work of these different committees. Is that a fair summary?
That's exactly right, yep.
Okay. Quickly, you probably had really nice accommodations, your own room, I'm sure, with a big bed and big TV and all that kind of thing.
So we actually got to stay in, I was in like a townhome, and I had my own room and bathroom. It was pretty nice. The food was pretty good too.
Wow. You should just know that we don't always meet in Ontario. Oftentimes Synod is at Calvin College and you end up staying in the dorms. Sometimes it's at Dordt College. It's been at Central College in Iowa. This year was at Redeemer. Okay, just keep going. Food, meals, good?
Yeah, food was good. It was kind of like going back to high school where like you don't know who to sit with and it's kind of awkward. And so I always kind of would look for, I don't know, people who are not a whole table full of people, but maybe less people, and sit with them. And maybe I was part of the weird table, so someone else felt bad for us and came down and sat, and it was fun to talk with him, and later found out that he was the president of Calvin University. So that was pretty interesting as well.
Could you tell us a little bit about the daily schedule? Like what can a person expect?
Super lax. I usually wake up at 4 a.m. to get to work by 6 a.m, and we didn't have to start until like 8:30. So like I was sleeping in, I would exercise in the morning. I had all the time in the world. It was easy as pie. And you didn't have to work with your hands. You just sat at a table and talked with people all day long, which was a little harder for me. But so we started about 8:30. We would have devotions and worship together. On the days we had committee, probably around 9 o'clock, we would be in committee until we were kind of done working, and sometimes that was like 8 or 9 at night. On the days that we had Synod, it was similar, about 8:30 start time, and then we would have prayer, devotions, worship, and probably start the work from 9 o'clock until whenever we finished, which was pretty late. So we would work from about 9 to noon. We would have a little bit of a break in between then, and then from 1 to like 5 and have a little break between there as well. And then after dinner, we would have a session as well.
Till about when?
So probably from like 7 to 9-ish, before or after, plus or minus a little.
Okay. You got to remember there's a lot of pastors there, so we're a little softer. We need an easy schedule. So let's fill us in a little bit on the content of Synod. What kinds of things do you remember? Your committee dealt with certain things, but then there were other topics beyond that. What can you share with us that you think we might be interested in?
Yeah, so I will share with you guys things that you might be interested in, but from the perspective of probably the dumbest person at Synod 2025. So the things that we were talking about in the Ecumenical Faith and Missions Committee, the two big things were our relationship with the Reformed Church of America, which I'll refer to as the RCA, and we also talked about church planting in the denomination. We also got to hear reports from World Renew And it was really cool to hear about World Renew, but we didn't have much to do other than say, wow, that's awesome, World Renew, thank you, and keep working on it, keep doing the good work. A couple other things that we talked about in the General Synod, you guys probably have read extensively about things like the banner, things like assisted suicide. I think Pastor Youngkwang was on something very important about, what was it, Pastor Youngkwang? Virtual church, yes, which produced a lot of interesting conversations. So those are probably the hot topic issues. Yeah, we can talk about maybe those. There were a couple other ones as well. What were the ones that you wanted to talk about? Sorry.
There were
virtual church.
Tell us about. Well, let's start with virtual church. What do you remember about that conversation and where we ended up?
Yeah, so virtual church was really interesting. And Pastor Youngkwang, you'll probably have to correct me if I'm wrong. The conversation, if any of you were watching online, was super interesting. A lot of people, and interestingly, I would say younger people, were saying, yeah, virtual church, like, it happens, it's good. A lot of other people were saying, well, because of the Belgic Confession, Vala number 13 or something, says that it has to be in something or other that Pastor Youngkwang knows much more about than I do. And people were saying, no, because of this in the Belgic Confession, it has to be a certain way, so there's no way that a church could be all virtual. And I think the way that Synod 2025 went forward was, this is uncharted territory in the whole wide world, and maybe it's not quite the right time for the CRC-NA to say, yep, we can do it, or no, we can't do it. So I think we said that churches, like what we do with the YouTube broadcasts, like that's really important, but we're still wondering and learning about what it looks like to actually have a church that is only online. And is that possible? How does that look in an actual church? So we didn't really go one way or another.
Yeah, I think that's the real important meat of the matter is, virtual church exploded during COVID, right? And we all had to go to church online and things like that. And I think, generally, those services that we can put online for those who are, stuck at home and for physical reasons or whatever can't get out, I think most people recognize that this is a really good thing. Where this gets even deeper is, are there, the question has to do with, can churches be only virtual? In other words, can you be a member of a church that only meets online? So you would never, there's never physical people. You're not participating in the sacrament like we did this morning. You're not going to feel the water or even see it splashing. So can a church be simply virtual? All right. And I think where Synod landed was it's probably too early to make a commitment on that.
Exactly. Yep. I didn't really realize. I mean, when I think of virtual church, I would think of just the YouTube, watching it when you're sick or whatever. But that this is an idea and a thing where churches are actually only online, as that's what they talk about as a virtual church. So yeah, we kind of said it's a little bit too early for us to make a hard decision on that. Okay.
How about that RCA question that your committee dealt with?
All right, so this is the room where it happens, It was really interesting, that conversation. There's a longer story to be shared because I was in it. It was really interesting, and it was really awesome how it all worked out. But our committee, I learned so much. I'm trying to think of where to start here. So we'll start with the RCA and the CRC, super close partnerships, mainly because our pastors are trained by the Heidelberg Catechism, the Belgic Confession, and the Canons of Dort. And so those three Reformed confessions shape the worldview of both of the pastors of both an RCA and a CRC. And that is why the denominations are in communion. And this status of in communion then means that CRC pastors can preach at an RCA church and vice versa. The RCA church government is a little bit differently structured than the CRC church government. So the CRC church government has the synod is kind of the most important rule maker, and then classes, which is the plural of classis. I learned that when I was there at synod. Classes then take decisions that synod had made and put them into practice in the individual churches, whose church councils then implement the decisions that synod had made that classes tells the councils to do, if I understand. So, and then the RCA then, the synod makes decisions, but classes can kind of say, I don't know about that, we're going to do something else, and then put that down to the councils of the churches. So then the CRC and the RCA, similar there with the three Reformed confessions, and then the big thing that we were talking about with the RCA was then the human sexuality report, where the CRC did make a hard stance on where we stand on it. And I have read now and studied the HSA, the human sexuality. What's the A part? Report. HSR. Yes, something that I'm learning more about every day. I've got a lot to learn. So the HSR, beautiful document. I've read it, studied it now. But, and so actually the RCA has a similar document and a similar stance, but because of the RCA's structure, certain classes don't have to abide by the laws that the RCA Synod has said with certain regards to human sexuality. So there are a number of RCA churches that aren't acting in compliance with the CRC's human sexuality report. And so that brought a lot of caution to a number of churches and people in the CRC, that should we be in communion with a church denomination that allows something that our denomination has made a stance on. And it was a really heavy conversation. For a number of days we talked about this. And we came up with, there was overtures to say we need to stay in communion with the RCA, and there were overtures that said, no, we need to break up with the RCA. And that's not the term that they use, but I'm going to just say break up because that's the easiest way to say it. And so we had a lot of discussions. We had a majority report and a minority report. We were working into the week off times discussing this, and we came up with a unified report that was actually really beautiful. I'm still really happy and amazed with how God did this. But we came up with a unified report that says, yes, we need to stay in relationship, in communion with the RCA. They're our brothers and we need them, our brothers and sisters, and we need them, and they need us. But we do have concerns. And so it was just a really, I think a really positive way to work together, to have different understandings of certain things come together, and just have the Spirit lead us in that regard. It was really, really special. It was really cool. And there was, I'm sure if any of you were watching online, there was heated conversation, and there was Robertson Rules things coming in with like we have an edit to make, and we're like, nope, that's an unfriendly edit, and like, oh man, I was like, I don't know all these things, but it was really interesting the way that Synod then approved what we had said, to say we need the RCA, they're our brothers and sisters. The three forms of confession are unifying to us, along with church plants and so many other good things going on between the two denominations. we are going to stay in relationship, in communion, because we need each other. And we have a little bit of concerns, and we're just going to hold that because that's just kind of life when you're in communion with other people. And so it was really cool. That was a big discussion. There's a lot more to be said about that, but maybe right now is not the time. We can talk. But it was really, really cool.
Yeah, just a side note there. What Chris is talking about is when committees gather and do their committee work, it's best if a committee can come with a unified report. Sometimes they can't, and so you have a majority report and a minority report. Sometimes you have two minority reports, that kind of thing. And then that all has to be discussed or can be discussed on the floor of Synod. It's much better if a committee, wrangles through all of that stuff in committee and then can present a unified report. So that's good stuff. How about assisted suicide? That was a big topic, still is. Today, more and more states are, I think Illinois just did something in this regard. But in Canada, it's a huge issue already, and they've been very progressive with this. What did the church have to say?
Man, this was also a really, really cool conversation. I'm trying to think of the words to start. I don't know how often you guys think about death. I'm a 34-year-old, so don't think about death all the time, but I do work in agriculture. It's the second most dangerous profession in the world, and I ride a motorcycle. So I think that death is not out of the picture for me. Not like sitting working underneath a 30,000-pound tractor that's held up by a few jack stands and thinking, ooh, I hope that this will be okay. Because I'll get squished quickly. So I think about death a little bit often, and maybe have, and my coworkers and I are kind of like, could happen. So we have maybe a little bit of a cheap view of death, and it was really interesting to talk about assisted suicide, a big thing in Canada and Holland, actually, to the countries that are kind of in the forefront of assisted suicide. So assisted suicide, from what I understand, and please don't take this as like what it actually is, but it is kind of like people who hurt in one way or another and don't see a way to live, to go forward anymore. And these can be young people, they can be old people, and certain states, countries that are allowing then these people who say, I don't have the will to live to go on anymore, to have assisted suicide, like doctor administered. And there were stories that people would talk about, like in classes, North Alberta and Saskatchewan, a pretty conservative part of the country in Canada. A guy who would drive people to and from the hospital for whatever reason, and a lady leaving her house to go to hospital to have assisted suicide. And it was really heartbreaking. And at the same time, this is a powerful conversation. We had doctors that were leading the report that the CRC, what's the word, Pastor Young Kwang, the report that this committee, the CRC committee on assisted suicide, so they had studied this for a year or more before Synod 2025, and they came together this report, which is in the Acts for Synod 2025, and they talked about how sad it is that people, for whatever reason, mental, physical, whatever else, don't see the will to live anymore. And they talked about how precious life is. Excuse me, you guys. This is a really powerful conversation. And it really made me so thankful to be part of a church that loves life because it's a gift from God. And so we, I think, almost unanimously passed the report on assisted suicide, saying that we deplore that this is going on. And I think the word was actually deplore, that life is a gift from God, and it is meant to be rejoiced in and glorifying God. It's such a good thing. And we deplore what happens in assisted suicide. And for me, that was really special. Kind of made me think of of death. It made me think of life, and Ecclesiastes means a lot more to me now, thinking about assisted suicide. So, that was just a really, really cool conversation to be had. And that's what we came up with. And the Synod, I think, was unanimous on this deploring of assisted suicide. So it was really cool, really special to me.
So, just a couple things to note there. We have a binational church, and so a lot of Canadians were a part of that discussion, and yet the decision was almost unanimous, you said.
Yeah, and that goes into another overture that we talked about in Synod was the binational denomination that we had, that we have. And there was one overture for the Acts of Synod to say, maybe we should think about having different organizations for both countries, because Canada and America are very different. I didn't really realize this before. Politically, Canadian churches think differently, and maybe than American churches, and they're represented differently than American churches. And so there was a committee that talked about this, and they came up with the report that said, no, we need each other, and we need each other, and we're going to move forward together. So that was pretty cool. And I was kind of surprised by this, but also a vast majority, most people saying, yep, we're going to move forward together. So I know that there's a number of Canadian churches that had put in the overture, like, I don't know about this dual thing. But the majority of people at Synod said, yeah, we're going to move forward together. We need each other. And having the two working together is special.
So this has been on the table for a long time, really, and part of the issue, I don't always understand it. We're organized a little differently, and also the Canadian Church has to deal with different laws in Canada that they're constantly kind of struggling with. We in the States don't always recognize that or understand that, and so there's often a feeling with the Canadian churches, maybe we should just go our own way and we can handle things like we see fit. And this is really an important decision, I think, to express the fact that we want to remain unified together. It's not an easy thing to do, but there's a commitment there to work through those things.
Yeah. Good question. I would say
it's a good question. The question was, were the Canadians outvoted, or were they in favor of this too?
I think by the numbers they probably were outvoted, but I know the majority of the Canadian churches were also in support of it. Yeah.
And Canada's a big country as well, so you have different geographical regions feel different about these things, right? But let's keep trying to move through this.
We got 2 minutes left if we want to be on time here.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the banana real quick?
Sure.
All right. So this one was the last thing that we talked about, and it was a really hot button issue.
He's talking about this magazine, the banner.
Yeah,
the banner.
The banner, yep. I actually read the banana, and it did not have very nice things to say about Dort, so... So the main thing that we talked about in Synod 2025 was the mandate for the banner. In the mandate before Synod 2025 said something about listing diverse viewpoints, and so we had to be very careful that we weren't talking about the banner, about the staff, but we were talking about the mandate for the banner. What do we want the banner to talk about? And the committee that was deciding this, I know that they had talked long and hard about it, and it was not one-sided at all. There was a lot of discussion about this, and the consensus then was to change the mandate to cross out the word diverse and to say to talk about viewpoints in the CRC. And this was very contentious, even. Today it still is. It caused a lot of hurt, I think, and just a lot of changes to the banner. So we the banner, if you read it now, is a lot different, I think, than it was before. It's hard to talk about that one, how it actually is different. And I think, I think the majority of CRC churches are looking to read the banner and read more articles about what it means to be Reformed and what that worldview is, and what that worldview then, how that changes the way that we live, which is a very Reformed perspective. And I think the banner, before we changed the mandate, looked at things, and I'm going to be really overgeneralized here, but a little bit from a little bit more liberal side of view. And I think that the majority of Synod 2025 said, well, maybe we can turn it back just a little bit so that we can understand more and more what it means to be Reformed, and how that shapes our lives. So it was a really hard thing to talk about, still is. There are people with different kinds of opinions in our denomination, from one side of the spectrum to the other, and that's a cool thing, but it's also really hard. So that was just kind of one thing that we're dealing with and probably will for a bit yet.
Yeah, I think so. So this has always been a bit controversial, because you're trying to write to a wide spectrum of people and their beliefs. And I think there was a time. So this is some of what I've heard, but there was a time when, the Christian Reformed Church was more homogenous. We were quite similar. You could go to a church in Milwaukee, and you could go to a church in Edmonton, Alberta, and the liturgy for worship was basically the same, right? 3 hymns and a benediction and doxology at the end. And they all came out of, the blue hymnal, that kind of thing. And so there was a time when the banner, I think there was a widespread call for, hey, we like to hear different opinions in the banner so we can consider those and talk about them and that kind of thing. Times have changed a little bit, and I imagine this was part of your discussion too, but the church has gone to an every member banner, and so we did that a number of years ago, where it's now in our ministry shares to basically send the banner to every member of the Christian Reformed Church. And I can vouch for this too. There have been times when people have joined our congregation and they've gotten the banner and started to read it, and they're like, whoa, I couldn't believe that our church felt this way about this. And it was kind of like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean we feel that way. And so the world and the church have changed, and the struggle then became, how does this function within our denomination? And there's been more of a movement, and I think that's what happened at Synod, was there's more of a movement to say, we need to do a better job of just declaring what it means to be Reformed for people newer to the denomination and also to the world. Is that fair representation? So that's kind of where some of the struggle is here. I never voted for an every member banner, so if you want to talk about that sometime, I'm happy to talk.
Yep, but I think that's about time there, Pastor Verhulst, eh?
Hey, yes, maybe you could just wrap up by saying, good experience, bad experience, what was it like for you?
Yeah, it was a good experience. It was really hard. It was like doing a hard workout where afterwards you know that it was something good for you. And for me, it was good for me. I think it was good for the church. So it's hard. It was good.
All right. If you want to read more about what happened at Synod, there's an agenda for Synod, but also the acts of Synod, so where Synod landed on this. The banner has covered, where the church landed on certain issues. There's a lot of things that you can read. You can go right to the source and talk to Chris after this session. But if you do have questions, we can point you in the right direction. Thank you for coming.